Now, again, what we're going to talk about is how to fill rooms with your ideal client, with your ideal customer, with your ideal employee, and not spend any money. And, here's the agenda. The first couple minutes, what I'm going to do is talk about stretching intellectually, because some of the things that I'm going to say may resonate with this audience because of the success they've had. You may say, yeah, I get it. Yeah, I understand it. But some of the concepts may be new, may be foreign. So again, what we're going to spend a couple minutes on is stretching intellectually. The next thing is we're going to give specific examples of how I've done what I'm talking about, and more importantly, how members of this audience can do the same kind of thing. And in the last session, the last couple minutes, we're going to talk about sequential sales, how you can sell products that you don't own and get revenue for it. And, I'm just thinking, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I did not say thank you to Andre for the invitation to make this presentation. When you take a look at who he is, what he's accomplished, and what this event is, it's breathtaking. So, Andre, thank you very much. Now, I love, I can't look at this without smiling. Everybody on this call is very busy. So what I'm going to say may get some people to shake their heads. What I'm going to talk about is, or what I'm going to suggest, is that you take time each day, every day, to do some daydreaming, to do some stretching intellectually. And I can hear some of the people saying, hey, Mark, I'm a busy person. I don't have time for this. That's baloney. But so what I'm suggesting is you start slow, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, and do some daydreaming, do some what if thinking. And the results that you get will be incredible. Now, this is a picture of my maternal grandfather, Mark Krupp. He was a politician. He was a farmer. And he taught me how to see the future. He taught me about vision casting. Now, he didn't use the phrase vision casting, but I'm going to give you a specific example of what I'm talking about and what he taught me. Now, when I was a little kid, he gave me a magnifying glass. That's me as a little kid. And he said, Mark, we are what we focus on. And the more you focus on something, the better you see it. So if we focus on the possibilities, if we focus on vision casting, if we focus on what if thinking, it's incredible what we can achieve. Now, here is an example. I said again, he was a politician. He was a farmer. I grew up on a farm. And, the one time when I was a little kid, he took me around the farm, and there was like a section, maybe 5 acres. It was a swamp. And I'm a little kid. And, this is what we saw, cows and swamp. And he took me around here. Again, this is from a vision casting perspective. All I could see was cows and a swamp. And he counted the number of springs in this swamp, told me what a spring was, how it worked. And then he said, Mark, what we're going to do is I'm going to create a pond for you and the kids. He had a whole bunch of grandkids to swim in. Now, again, one of the things that I'm going to talk about, and I'll give a little bit more detail later on, is the word Amish, like the Amish farmers, building a community around your ideas so that people come together for a common good. And here's the cool thing. They don't charge any money for it. Now, as I said, my grandfather was a farmer. He was a politician. He knew a whole lot of people. So he reached out to a neighbor, a friend, a buddy, and he just said, his name was Hale Bronson. And he said, hey, Hale, the swamp on the farm? Yeah, I know the swamp. How about some weekend you come by with some of your equipment and, help me dredge out the swamp? Hale shook his hand and said, Mark, I'd be glad to help you. That was my grandfather's name, Mark Krupp. He brought the equipment. That's my brother and me on the bulldozer. That's me waving. That's me on the dock after the swamp has been turned into a pond. That's my grandfather fishing. You can see the dock isn't all done yet. And the purpose of these 3 slides, again, is just to show you visually what I'm talking about when I talk about vision casting and the ability to see things that don't exist yet. And don't put any limits on your thought process. This is another thing that we're going to talk about with stretching. My first full-time employer was a guy by the name of John McCall. He was an incredible person, and he lived and worked with a phrase win-win. He would tell us in every situation, the other person has to win first. That man or woman wins first, then we win. It was just like a broken record, but I love the guy. And in our lives, that's what we should do. In our business, that's what we should do. When we're looking at a business prospect or a business opportunity, the other person has to win first. Now, I mentioned the meditation. And again, we're all busy people. And, some people say, hey, Mark, I don't have time for that. Like, you don't understand the pressures I'm under. Years ago, I met Jack Canfield, and Mr. Canfield is a best-selling author. He sold over 500 million books. He's got a family. He's got employees. And what he does a day, every day, is daydreams. He meditates. He takes time to do this. And, the things that you can accomplish when you do this are breathtaking. Now, one of the things that we have to watch out for is something I call dream stealers. And dream stealers can be your family, your friends, your coworkers, can be strangers. And you got to be careful when you come up with an idea, any kind of an idea, because they care for you. They're going to tell you why you can't do it. You're too young, you're too old, you're a man, you're a woman, you're a minority. There are all kinds of reasons. They're dream stealers. They don't want to hurt you. They want to protect you. And there are phrases that I use that I call them killer phrases. I'm too, it's too, you're too, well, you see. And lots of times, when we're presented with a new idea, reflexively, without even thinking, we say, well, I'm too busy to take a look at something new. Or I'm too old, or I'm too young, or you're too young, or, well, you see, that won't work in Philadelphia, or that won't work in San Francisco. So you got to be careful and protect yourself against dream stealers. And again, dream stealers are people that care about you, that love you. Now, I love this. We got those phrases again, the killer phrases. When I was just getting started in business, I reached out to a guy, there's a local business guy, self-made. He had an 8th grade education. And at the time of his passing, it was worth around $100 million. So I cold called, I'll say that again. I cold called this gentleman. And I just said, Mr. Pollock, my name is Mark Chamberlain. I've got a business idea. I was wondering if at some point in time I might bounce it off you and get your opinion. There was a pause, and he said, how about today? It took my breath away. And that's what if thinking. And when I got in front of him, I made my presentation. He listened very quietly, took notes, and then here is what he said. And I'm going to repeat this through the whole presentation. It's breathtaking. He said, Mark, what you got to do is whenever you come up with a new opportunity, get together with yourself and a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, and write down on a yellow tablet, what if? What if I could raise $100 million? What if I could double my income? What if I could quadruple my production? And he said, don't put any limits on that what if question. It's just you and a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. And then he said, because you're alone with you and the yellow tablet, how can I do this? And again, he said, don't put any limits, don't put any constraints on your thought process. Then he said, and he kind of leaned back in his chair and he laughed and he said, Mark, he said, this idea that you have is interesting, but I got to tell you, you may fail. You may fall flat on your face. And he said, the what if is that you got to consider that. What if I fail? What if, people say, hey, Mark Chamberlain, what a turkey. Did you hear what he tried to do? What a jerk. And what Mr. Pollock said was, if you can handle people laughing in your face, laughing behind your back, and say, so what? Then you go for it. Now, this was in the 1970s, and back in the 1970s, people read magazines. I was a salesman. These publications covered the market and the territory and the kind of people that I wanted to sell to. So I did my research, I did my homework, and my idea was taking out full page ads in these publications. Now think about that for a second. That's insane. Somebody that's just getting started, that doesn't have any money, that doesn't have any contacts, that doesn't have any information, taking out full page ads in national publications. That's a picture of me when I had hair. There was a little tear out. You could send in the thing. So again, the purpose of these slides are just to illustrate, the vision casting, the what if thinking. Now, after I retired from Merrill Lynch, I wrote a book on vision casting, and I'm doing workshops. I've done them for Aflac, for Colonial, for other companies. And with a vision casting perspective, what I've done is create a QR code so that when any person is having a cup of coffee, he or she can scan the code and it takes you to my website. And the coffee cup have the phrases, what if, how, what if, so what? So that as a person is drinking coffee every day, it reinforces the way you think, the positive thinking. Now, something else that I talk about, and I touched on before with the Amish, this is a huge audience, maybe global in its scope. So some people may not be familiar with the concept of Amish, but the Amish is a community where they come together for free to build barns for one another. They don't charge any fee. It's just out of a sense of community. Now, I take that concept and I apply it to business, creating a community around your project. And I'll say this slowly, creating a community around your project so that people come together and work for you for free because they want to. Now, again, on the what if thinking, and we're talking about marketing your business, getting the word out there, letting people know who you are, what you do. One of the things that Mr. Canfield talked about was, and again, think about this before when he was a nobody, when he was just getting started. He talked about, I'm talking to you, my audience right now, you're a commodity, you're a package, you have value. So what he would do, and what I've done, is you cold call radio stations. They have talk shows, they have news programs, and you say your name and you say to them, you got to be honest, you say, I have some content that I think can help your viewers or your listeners or both. Now, what's going to happen sometimes is people are going to hang up on you. What's going to happen sometimes is they're going to say no. But this is a picture of me on a radio talk show. Again, reach out to the radio programs and just say, I've got great content that may be of interest to your listeners. You can do the same thing with television. That's me at a TV show. And again, my cost to get on these shows to share my message was the time it takes to make a phone call. So this is a marketing tool that's available for all of you at any time. Something else that I talk about is Mark's math. And, I'm going to talk a little bit about the reticular activating system a little bit later on. But, when you look at that without even thinking, you say, well, the answer is 50. And what I teach and what I share is not necessarily, that 150 might be 150,000, might be 150 million, might be 1.5 billion. And, the answer to this might be 100 and 225s. So whenever you come up with an opportunity and someone says, well, that's going to cost 100,000 or 100 million or 1 billion, just sit down and do Mark's math and think about ways that you can divide that and create Amish and have other people pay that for you. And, again, it's other people's money, other people's building, other people's equipment. What we're talking about here is developing a strategy where people will let you use their money, people will let you use their building, their equipment for free. Think Amish. Now, this picture I love. When you look at this picture in my workshops, I say, what do you see? And, the answer is, well, 2 little kids. And I say, do you see doctors? Do you see lawyers? Do you see bankers? Do you see criminals? What do you see? And the answer is, at this stage, they're a blank slate. They don't know anything. They don't have any preferences. They don't have any prejudices. But here's the cool thing, and I'll say this slowly. Every person alive has something called the reticular activating system. It's part of our brain. And as we receive and perceive information, we store some things and we get rid of others. We create patterns. We create routines. Some of you, when you get up in the morning, you go to Dunkin' Donut, or you go the same way to work every time. I love this picture. When you think of the Wild West, and again, I understand there may be people on here from Paris or Germany or wherever, but when you think about the Wild West, you think people get in the wagon trains and go out west. The fact is, they went the same way every time, to the extent that if you Google later today, Wagon Wheel Rut State Park, you'll see the wagon wheels where the trains went the same way every way. And this is the way that our brain works. We establish patterns, we establish routines, we establish habits. And what I suggest is that we break out of those patterns. Now, a couple of visuals that I'll share with you, and then we'll get into the referral technique. Again, here's another picture, and I say, what do you see? And somebody might say, well, I see a person that's visually impaired. What if, get back to the what if, how, what if, so what? What if we created a baseball team for people that are visually impaired? Forget it, visually impaired, blind, can't see. What they've done is they've created a ball that beeps. It makes noise. And when you go to one of these games, there's no talking, there's no cheering, there's no clapping, because what the batter is doing, who is blind, who can't see, he or she is listening for the beeping ball, and they swing the ball. And sometimes, like any batter, they hit the ball. And there are people in the outfield that catch the ball sometimes. And here's the cool thing. After you hit the ball, you run the bases. And somebody might say, well, how does a blind person run bases? The bases beep. So again, this is another idea of vision casting, saying things that don't exist. Now, I love this picture. This is another one. I say, what do you see? And a lot of people will say, well, I see a person, or a child rather, that's physically challenged. The cool thing about this, like today's a man, this person's parents was, from birth, they said, you're special. And I don't mean special needs. They said, you're special. And I'll say, this is incredible. They said to this child from birth, there are no limits to what you can do or be. Take a look at that picture. There are no limits to what you can do or be. And when he was a little kid, the kids like to skateboard, so they bought him a skateboard. And you can't quite see it, but attached to his bottom is a foot. So he would literally skateboard with his foot. Now, I've said lots of times, I'm happily married, like 48 years. I have no idea how women think. From birth, when he was growing up, he thought, I'm going to marry an attractive woman. I'm going to have a family. That's him with his first child, his wife with his second child. They now have 4 children. Hold on, it gets better. He's a motivational speaker that travels around the world giving motivational speeches. That's him in front of 10,000 people. So again, the point of me talking about the reticular activating system and stretching intellectually is, lots of times when we're presented with opportunities, some people see problems. And what I'm suggesting is, again, think what if, how, what if, so what. Now, here are the examples. Steps to duplicate your ideal client, customer, donor, employee. What I want you to do is take the time to sit down and give some thought to what your ideal customer looks for. Or if you're looking for startup money, what that person looks like. If you're involved with a nonprofit and you want to get more money for the nonprofit, what does your ideal donor look like? Take time. One of the things that, when I was at the old Merrill Lynch, we used to go to workshops, and you'd qualify. You'd have to hit certain levels of production. When you did, you'd get to meet some of the top people in the country, in the company country. And we were at a workshop the one time, a couple hundred of us in the audience, and the speaker said, I need a volunteer. Anybody stand up. And, somebody stood up and he said, now don't say too much, but tell me what industry your favorite client is, the person that just lights you up when you see their name on the phone. And the guy thought for a second, and he said, car dealerships. And the speaker said, how many car dealerships do you have in your book? And the financial advisor said 3. And the speaker paused for a second and said, why don't you have 300? He said, they go to the same workshops, they go to the same retreats, they read the same material, they know one another. So what you can do is you can target market. If car dealerships are your ideal client, you can target market and nest within them. And this again works for donors. And then here's the cool thing. Some people dread Mondays, but if you use this idea, when Monday comes around, you get excited. Think about your passion, you as an individual. In addition to your business enterprise, what lights you up? Is it charitable giving? Maybe the SPCA, the Heart Association? Do you like to play golf? Do you like baseball? Do you like to travel? What is your passion? And what I'm suggesting is you link your passion, something that you love, with your business and your ideal client, your ideal donor, your ideal funding source. And, this is a global webinar. We got people all around the world on this webinar. So what I'm going to suggest is you think globally. Don't limit yourself to one geographic area. And think about where you want to work, when you want to work, how you want to work, and with whom you want to work. Now, I mentioned a vision board, and I got it. I look at this and I just smile. It's incredible. A vision board can be a picture. It can be a drawing. It can be some notes you have. After I retired, I did some consulting work, and this is one of the guys that I worked with. And he said, how about we meet at Hotel Hershey? It's a resort in Pennsylvania. He drove 2 hours. I drove 2 hours. Now, we didn't have an appointment, but here's what we did. It's a huge resort, huge conference center. And Louis and I walked down the hall till we found one room that was being set up for a conference. We walked into the room. We didn't have an invitation. We weren't supposed to be there. And we walked up on stage, and Louis pulled out his camera, his phone, and handed it to one of the setup people and said, I'd like you to take a picture of me and my partner. And Louis said to me, now we're up on stage. The room is empty. There's nobody there. And he laughed and he said, Mark, can you hear the roar of the crowd? Can you hear the roar? Acknowledge the crowd. So he's got his hands up. I'm smiling. There ain't nobody in the audience. But what we did was we put that picture on the bathroom mirror, on the fridge, everywhere. And the cool thing is, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, we were able to actualize that vision. Now, I took that same picture, and I thought it would be neat before I wrote my book. I thought it would be neat to meet Jack Canfield. Now, again, he sold 500 million books, incredibly big guy, incredibly busy. So I created a vision of Mr. Canfield and me on the stage. And I, every morning, drinking a cup of coffee, thinking about this, looking about this. How can I get in front of Jack Canfield? How can I establish a relationship with somebody like that? This is a picture of me on stage at one of Mr. Canfield's events. Won't go through the whole thing, but he invited me up on stage, full disclosure, during a break. I gave him one of my PhDs. PhD stands for Pig-Headed Determination. I gave him my book. He read my book. He liked my book. He gave me a plug. So, again, think about you as an individual. Think about creating a vision board for yourself, and don't put any limits on what you're thinking about. And again, we get back to you and your market. Who do you want to deal with? Do you want to deal with men? Do you want to deal with retired? Do you want to deal with, what is your market? Think about the geographic information, the psychographic information, and put no limits on what you want to do. Now, this is powerful. This is unbelievably powerful. And I'll let you look at that just for a second. Harvard did research on brain function, and they found that when any person is talking, it stimulates the part of the brain that deals with food, sex, and money. So that the more that you can get a person to talk about whatever it is they care about, the more they're going to like you and not know why. The picture on the right is a brain with normal activity. The picture on the left, it's on fire. That's a person that is talking, and you can see it's on fire. And you got to remember, even if they're yelling at you, if they're saying you're a turkey, I don't like you, I can't stand you, If that happens, when that happens, just say, tell me more. Help me understand. Help me understand. Tell me more. And if they say, are you being a wise guy? You got to be honest and say, no, I just want to understand. This tool is incredible. Now, here's an example of how I use this technique. And, I was listening, I was taking notes, and I was, hearing about the pitches, 30 seconds to 4 minutes. That's how much time you got to make a pitch. If you use the technique that I'm talking about, you can get hours with your ideal prospect, hours without spending any money. And the hook, the catch, the gimmick is relationships. I got connected with a businesswoman, incredibly successful person, and I employed this strategy that I'm going to give you. And she then referred me to another incredibly successful business person. And I just picked up the phone, and the first person made the introduction, said, Mark Chamberlain's an incredible person. I think you ought to spend time with him. I think you should meet with him. So when I when I made the call, the door was open. And I just said, I'd like to get together with you at a time that's mutually convenient to learn more about your business. I met with her. She owns several businesses. This is a private dining room above one of her restaurants. And we sat there, and what I did literally for 2.5 hours was say, tell me more. How is that? That's interesting. Why did you do that? I didn't talk about me. I didn't talk about my product. I didn't talk about anything except listen to her and draw her out. Remember the food, sex, and money, Harvard research? The more the other person talks, the more they're going to like you and not know why. After I got talking, I knew that her hot button was the SPCA. So I said to her, would you have any interest in us doing a workshop on Client Copier donor duplication for the benefit of the SPCA? And I stopped. And she looked at me for what seemed like an eternity. And she said, would it be okay? I have a 6,500 person email list. Would it be okay if I invited the people on my list to a workshop? I said it would be okay. And she went a step further. Remember, she owns a restaurant. She said, would it be okay if I catered the event and pick up the tab? I said, that'd be okay. So think about this. She's inviting 6,500 people. That's an email blast. She's going to cater the event. And I said to her, my partner's coming in from out of town. She said, no problem. I have apartment buildings and I keep one apartment vacant all the time for out of town guests. You can stay there. So think about what happened. I walked into this business, no cold call, no mass emailing, just a handshake. And I get 6,500 referrals. I get the thing catered and I get the housing, so that when we walked in and made our presentation, the room was filled with our ideal prospects and we didn't spend a penny. Now, take a moment and take a look at this. This is the conversation. What I suggest is you don't fancy it up. You use it verbatim. And what you do is you pick your ideal relationship. If it's a donor, if it's an employee, if it's a client, whatever it is, people you want to fill rooms with. And you got to be honest. You just say, hey, Frank, or hey, Louise, I need some advice. Can you help me? Now think about what you just did. You're in front of a person that knows you, likes you, trusts you, respects you, and you're saying, I need some help. Can you help me? Chances are exceedingly good they're going to say, sure, what do you need? And then again, you're just very straightforward. I'd like to develop more relationships with people like you. And again, if it's a banker, a lawyer, a doctor, a butcher, a baker, you say that with more lawyers like you, with more car dealerships like with you, with more people that care about animals. Do you think that's a good idea? Now, again, because she knows you, he, she, they know you, like you, trust you, respect you, they're going to say, yeah. Here's the golden question. If you were me, how would you do it? And then be quiet. Be quiet. And it may seem like an hour, but what they're doing when they're staring at you is they're thinking about how they can help you grow your business. It's breathtaking. Now I'm going to give you two more examples rather. When I was at Merrill Lynch, and again, think about your business, focus on you. Merrill Lynch has a lot of products, a lot of services, and what we have to do is think about those things that light us up. So I did that. I was involved with the American Heart Association, and what I wanted to do was gather more assets for the American Heart Association. There's something called platinum clubs. They're the top clubs in the United States. There are 150 of them. And again, with what if thinking, what if I could fill the ballroom with wealthy donors, people that I liked, that I didn't know yet, that have an interest in charitable giving. Now, Merrill Lynch is a name, the Westmoreland Club is a name, the American Heart Association is a name, so I'm building some excitement level. What I did is, again, thinking about what if thinking, I thought, okay, Merrill Lynch is good, Heart's good, Westmoreland Club is good. I cold called Christie's in New York, and I just said, my name is Mark Chamberlain. I'm working at Merrill Lynch. I'm doing an event for the American Heart Association. We're doing it at one of the platinum clubs. Do you have somebody that might come by and speak about the gifting of tangible personal property? Excuse me, watches, rings, jewelry, homes, cars, paintings. There was a pause, and then the person said, when do you want us there and how long do you want us to speak? Now, using that strategy that I used before the conversation, I had clients that fit that profile, that were wealthy, that had charitable interests, and I just sat down with them and I used that script. I don't want to use the words, I used that conversation verbatim. Now, the idea of 6 degrees of separation is you and I, and think about this globally, you and I are 6 people away from anybody in the world that you want to have lunch with, have coffee with. 6 people away. I employed that to fill the room with wealthy people that had charitable intent. Now think about this from a marketing perspective. What is a room filled with wealthy people that have charitable intent? It's a commodity. It has value. So what I did is I figured out how much all of this was going to cost, and the lunch back then was going to be around $5,000. So I just made up a list of people that I thought would want to be on the stage with me, and I called them. And I said, hey, I'm doing an event at the Westmoreland Club. Can have wealthy people there for the benefit of the American Heart Association. It's $5,000. Would you like to be on stage with me? Everybody said no. Next, I said, what would you be willing to invest? And the magic number was 1,000. So I had 5 people kick in $1,000 a piece. So when I walked into that event, the room was filled with my ideal prospects. The room was paid for, the food was paid for, the advertising was paid for. All I had to do was go in and make the presentation. Now, this is this kind of thinking works for anything. I mentioned the bus before. I like to play golf. So I thought, wouldn't it be neat if I could fill, this is another one, fill a room with my ideal clients. Now, in this particular case, it was a smaller venue. All I was looking for was 4 foursomes. And Glenmora is a private club near us. It's very exclusive, very nice. I'm not a member. Clearwater was the pro, and I did research. I found out who's the best pro in northeastern Pennsylvania. And when I got the name, I cold called Cleve. And here's again what I said. The other guy's got to win first. I said, Cleve, I'm thinking about having an event at your club. Going to bring some wealthy individuals up. I understand you do golf clinics. Would you have an interest in doing a golf clinic for my prospects? He said, that's what I do for a living. So same kind of thing. I knew who I wanted. I used the 6 degrees of separation. I used that conversation. And again, it gave me a quote on what it would be for the golf course, for the lunch, for the pro, for the whole package. I just worked backwards and figured out who would want to be on the stage with me, so that when I walked into, onto the course, that's where we started, onto the course, everything was paid for. All I had to do was make my pitch. Now, I'm going to wrap things up. This is something, this is the first time that you've seen me. What I'm going to be doing is vision casting webinars. And I'm going to have content like this, except that I'm going to vary it a little bit. In each presentation, I'm going to have a man or woman talk about how they started a business from scratch, just using a yellow tablet, a number 2 pencil, and a PhD. And the PhD stands for pig-headed determination. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about me and some of what you just saw. Then we're going to interview an incredibly exciting individual, have him or her tell their story so that you can benchmark them. Maybe you can do some of what they do. And then we're going to have a brainstorming session where, say, for example, I'm going to hold up maybe a pen, just a regular crud pen, and say, how can we sell this for $15,000? And some people, get back to the reticular activating system. Some people might say, well, hey, Mark, you can't do that. Nobody's going to pay you money for that. And what if, how, what if, so what? And, if you like what you see, one of the things is I'm going to have an affiliate link so that people can share this information. Now, my next webinar is going to be one I call Rent, Mortgage, Lease. Why? Now, you men and women are, starting up your business. You need a facility, and you may be paying $1,000 a month, $10,000, $100,000 a month for it. What I teach in this webinar is how to build a community around that rental payment, that mortgage payment, that lease payment, so that other people can pay it for you. I've done it. I have friends that do it. And more importantly, if you attend this next webinar, you're going to learn how you can do the same kind of thing. And then what we're going to do is we're going to brainstorm for $1,000. I'm going to throw out an idea. We're going to brainstorm in real time. And it's going to be, when you do that, it's incredibly exciting. This is a picture of me when I was president of Junior Achievement some years ago. I wanted to raise money for the board, so I don't have time to go through the whole thing. But what we did was I dressed up like, American Gothic, the bald guy with the pitchfork. We sold an ounce of seed corn for $1,500 per ounce to people that like the Junior Achievement. Now I can see we're getting up on time. This is a screen that shows a potential revenue share for individuals that work with me as affiliates. And this, I'm just looking at my clock here. If you'd like to have a conversation with me, just text your name and email to 570-262-6261. Now, I've left about a minute and 20 seconds for any questions or comments.
I apologize, Mark. We're actually a little bit over time. So what I would recommend to everybody is please connect with Mark if you have questions. His contact information is in the LinkedIn post, as well as we can post it for you. But Mark, thank you so much. That was really, really interesting, really good stuff in there. Especially, I was fascinated by the baseball team. I've got to look into that more as somebody who does accessibility work. But thank you so much, Mark. That was wonderful. And I believe Howard's going to come on. Thank you.